Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hi, welcome to this edition of Podcast on Defense. This time, our guest for the podcast is neither a businessman nor is he from the armed forces. In fact, he is an academician, an achiever in computer science and engineering. But why did we choose an academician for a podcast on defense? Well, that's because for realization of Atmanirbharta in defense sector, the government is pushing for greater cross-pollination of ideas and research between the academia and the industry. This engagement is not just happening within the country at a better pace, but India and the United States of America have also come together and forged the India-US Defense Acceleration Ecosystem, that is INDUS-X, to work on commonly identified critical emerging technologies in the defense and space domains. It also involves academic startup participation from both the countries. And who better to talk on the subject, global partnership of academia and defense industry, than Mr. Vijaykrishnan Narayanan. He has been coordinating INDUS-X Academic Startup Collaboration from the US side since the launch of the initiative in June last year. To briefly introduce Mr. Narayanan's vast accomplishments, he is the A. Robert Knoll Chair Professor of Computer Science and Engineering and Electrical Engineering and Associate Dean for Innovation at the Pennsylvania State University. Mr. Narayanan also serves as Director of the Penn State Center for Artificial Intelligence Foundations and the Engineering Systems, as well as the Interim Director of Limited Submission for the university's Office of the Senior Vice President of Research. He moved to America after completing his bachelor's in Computer Science and Engineering from University of Madras in 1993. Mr. Narayanan, we really appreciate that you took time to join us on our podcast from the USA. Let's begin our conversation, sir. So please tell us, India-US Defense Acceleration Ecosystem, INDUS-X, has advanced the commitment to build a defense innovation bridge between the two countries on critical emerging technology. What stage it is since it was launched a year back?
Dalip, thanks for engaging in this very exciting phase of India-US collaboration out here. Since its launch in June 2023, there has been significant momentum in the India-US defense acceleration ecosystem. And I have been working with the academic startup collaboration aspects of this collaboration. I'm really happy to come back and say that there has been significant progress in this direction since the program kickstarted in June 2023. We have had a bunch of exploratory workshops that have narrowed down some of the technical areas of engagement. It's also started to identify the needs of startups and how they can collaborate with academic institutions and the value that they'll end up getting with working with academic institutions. And more recently, we have been able to organize more deeper focused technical workshops, for example, in space technologies in February, where now we have very focused technical directions that are ripe for joint collaborations across the partners, both in academia as well as industry in both India and US. And there are very positive signs and support from both the Indian and the US funding mechanisms to try and seed some of these efforts, and hopefully that will give us a lot more momentum in the next 12 months to start seeing the early fruits of this initiative.
You are anchoring the academic partnership from the US side. Can you give us a sense of the engagement between the academia and the startup? For instance, how many academic institutions from the USA are collaborating for the INDUS-X, and similarly the story on the Indian side?
I would probably say that there are many universities that were involved. And in fact, the early phase, when we started this up in June 2023, we landed up talking to at least 15 to 20 university leaders across the United States, specifically with the INDUS-X defense collaboration. And we also landed up coordinating with the American Association of Universities, which is leading the broader ISET engagement between India and the US. Penn State President Neeli Bendapudi is being part of that AU India-US relationship. So we have been coordinating to get an even broader sense of that. As far as the folks that have been very deeply engaged, the set of universities have varied based on the specific workshops, but a lot of different universities have been playing a role in this part. The August workshop in 2023 was coordinated between the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, which led the Indian coordination part. And again, there were many universities in India that were involved, but IIT Kanpur landed up leading the Indian coordination, and Penn State landed up leading the US coordination. We are still growing number of universities. It's essentially a mechanism where it is because of the willingness to make this happen. So it's not a list that is limited to just a few. So it's almost going to be impossible for me to list all the wonderful collaborators. The space workshop in February was led out of India by Indian Institute of Science and also the Indian Space Association, which is a quasi-government entity representing a bunch of space startups. And on the US side, in addition to Penn State, University of Texas, Austin provided support for that workshop. And as we progress in future, we will land up bringing in partners across. We have had Georgia Tech and Purdue colleagues provide many of these support mechanisms to reach out to a broader audience. And that list just keeps growing over the last 9 months.
As I understand, the academia reach out with the defense industry in USA is quite robust. How do you think this partnership is going to help workforce and institutions here in India?
So one of the things that I am recognizing in this whole aspect is the perception of value that an academic institution brings towards innovation or new products is at a very different stage of phase in the United States and India. In the US, there is a long history of university research or university affiliated federal research centers contributing to key technologies that are important for our defense industry. In India, there are centers of excellence in small pockets that accomplish the same thing, but the broad social acceptance, both among the public as well as many of the startup companies, the inherent value of what would come from an academic institution is something that is formative in many cases, except for, again, few experts that have actually been the key to some of the new technologies that have emerged. So I think what I have seen, especially with some of the startups that have started visiting the United States, the research labs out here, attend events like the AUTM technology transfer meeting in February, I see that there is a better awareness of what academic collaboration can do. I think academic involvement in the research in a more deeper fashion helps with two things. One is it creates sustainable innovation. What I mean by sustainable innovation, we may have critical needs to accelerate deployment of new ideas into real operational platforms in 2 to 3 years. But what academic partner lands up providing, it ensures that that is a continuous pipeline. New ideas continue to emerge, not just the first 2 years, but for every year after, the ideas start churning. It also gives you an option for scaling up different sets of ideas to try and explore, so that you have an opportunity that one of the many ideas that are concurrently invested can succeed. And one key aspect that I want to kind of articulate to everyone listening to this particular podcast: success doesn't mean everything that you invest lands up being a successful project. Many times you just land up seeing the success part of it. You don't land up seeing a bunch of different failures that are a stepping stone to success. So in research, it is really, really critical, especially when it comes to innovation, that you seed a lot of high risk, high payoff projects to be able to really get you the defense superiority, the defense edge that you need. So it is going to take the mindset to say, oh, not everything just needs to be a translational project. Okay, this is going to work, but really look at investing in things that have a way to fundamentally transform your defense capabilities.
For INDUS-X, the broad agenda has been more or less identified and mechanisms are also falling in place. Sir, please take us through each one of them briefly and what we can expect in times to come.
So there are a bunch of different technological areas that are important to the INDUS-X defense collaboration. And critical aspect of INDUS-X is essentially evolving around critical defense technologies. And of course, a lot of it is involved with commercializing dual use technologies out here, so that it creates a scalable notion for these defense collaborations. One aspect that the INDUS-X Academic Collaboration has invested in recently has been in developing space technologies. And if you notice, over the last 2 years, there has been a significant movement towards understanding space as potentially a contested space, which needs to account for the defense angle out there. Many countries, including the United States, their most recent defense is in the space force. And I've seen similar announcements from many European countries as well as Australia in showing synergies in space. And Indian researchers are very excited trying to explore that together. So that's one area that we have been looking at, and that's going to be very vital to a broad range of technologies, including communications, many of the day-to-day life that we deal with. So space technologies is one. We are also interested in AI and any of the sensing technologies and communication technologies that are involved with some of these defense technologies.
Let's come to funding. It has been a major concern because funding deep defense technology R&D requires deep pocket as well. What about joint funding efforts between the two countries?
So I think as far as funding is concerned, I think one of the things that the academic institutions have done over the past year, there is inherent research capacity in ongoing programs at many of these academic institutions. Many of the initial discussions and seeding efforts and other aspects have actually been supported by some of these underlying existing mechanisms. And it has been really great from that perspective that it has actually given us momentum. And more recently, through engagement with many of our government and private partners in this particular perspective, there are some programs that have been identified that can be immediate mechanisms for seeding some of these programs. For example, colleagues from the US AFOSR, that's the Air Force Research, as well as the Office of Naval Research, showed some scenarios where they're already investing in researchers in India for some of these projects. And they've also shown a willingness to fund discussions and workshops for more things. But it is vitally important for the INDUS-X aspect of that collaboration, especially the one that involves the technology transition to startups and a deep coordination with the startup ecosystem. That is primary intent of this. We need to be able to find and channelize specific funding mechanisms that would help the interaction between the academic and startup ecosystems, and also to be able to create a culture where the academic interactions between the Indian and US entities land up seeding new startups. So I think when we think about funding in this case, there is work already through joint challenges that the Defense Innovation Unit and the Innovation of Defense Excellence, the two counterparts of the US Department of Defense and the Indian Ministry of Defense, that are starting to seed startup companies. There are research programs that appear to seed some initial work for academic institutions. But I think the focus of new funding on INDUS-X should be to be able to create new startups based on innovations happening between academic institutions, and also provide funding that will facilitate, for example, an Indian startup to embed some of their work to use testbed facilities in a US academic researcher, or vice versa, where you would expect an US academic or a US startup to embed Indian academic institution to try and build things. And the ability for people to move around, be embedded in research teams, that is where things really get done. I think we are in a world where we have been able to do a lot virtually using existing resources right now, but a momentum towards actually funding some of these things at interface will be really critical to ensure that the innovation part of this ecosystem lands up being sustainable. That investment is going to be critical so that it lasts beyond 2 years. We need to set that foundation pretty quick, and there is a sense of urgency to ensure that it happens quick, so that the great momentum that's being created using existing infrastructure of many of these partners get to the next level.
Scientists like you ideally want to operate in a barrier free atmosphere, but reality is different. There are regulatory and other restrictions. Innovations can clash with competing national interests of India and US also. How do you think such complex issues would be addressed at this forum?
I think I can just reflect on my own engagement with both the US and the Indian government officials who have been facilitating this. I think there is unbelievable enthusiasm to try and break down as many barriers as possible. And I would like to thank the support, for example, that I've had personally myself. There has been empowerment to an academic trying to coordinate these things, for me to kind of think out of the box to try and facilitate these interactions. So from a foundational level, I think at least an academic institution where many of these new innovations are being seeded at a very foundational level without getting into a specific product and other things, that is kind of the easiest part, and I think some of the barriers there already come down. But as you rightly point out, when it starts getting into a product or a deployed system, then it lands up getting a little more challenging, because we still need to deal with existing rules and regulations such as export or ITAR and other aspects. And there is also an additional aspect where there are people who have experienced challenges in the past with similar collaborations and momentum towards this. However, again, I can just tell this in all sincerity. I think the need for partnership and the depth of friendship between US and India in this particular scenario appears to be very sincere at all levels. And I can tell you, for all the academics and startups that I have interacted, we are extremely sincere in making this work because these are the two largest democracies in the world, which actually looks at setting a new phase of happy living for entire mankind. So I think it is a partnership that needs to be looked at a new lens. We need to also be very particular about what are things that are so common, so shared, that we are able to work past certain things that we would definitely diverge. Any good friend should diverge in certain things because of their national security. But right now, I believe that there are enough shared pathways in this friendship that one or two things where we may not share exactly the same thing are probably not going to be the key issue. Having said that, yes, we need continued push in the regulatory process. We need to ensure that we provide and eliminate not just the regulatory barriers, we also need to think about this as an operational barrier. So, for example, if I, as a researcher, am requesting to interact with another researcher in a science facility of the Indian government, I think the researcher should be given a broad clearance. Okay, you can engage and you can discuss and maybe have internal reporting mechanisms for what they discuss, but not necessarily require for each and every interaction to say, oh, you need clearance. So I think overarching notions of empowering individual researchers, individual research groups across these institutions. Okay, you can land up doing a workshop. We know it is dual use, we know it's defense related, but there really doesn't need to be a constraint to say, oh, your organization needs to just do defense, your organization just needs to do dual use. When we think about collaboration, we cannot necessarily, for example, in space, as much as we want the civilian part and the defense part, maybe from an operational viewpoint at a government level, it may be easy to separate things. But as an academic, many of the fundamental principles, the innovations that I may create for a navigation system or an AI engine that has a low latency response to do certain things, it is extremely difficult for me to label that as a defense technology or a commercial technology or a civilian use at that stage of it. And for real innovations to happen and to give you that edge, we cannot constrain you from thinking in a perspective that kind of compartmentalizes some of these innovations. For the academic and startup aspects of it, it is really going to be key for us to support the critical defense technologies while leveraging the commercializing dual use technologies. And the mindset from both the policy level for letting this type of barriers disappear is going to be critical, that it scales up. And we are confident in the next 8 to 12 months, we will have some small groups that actually demonstrate those barriers can be overcome. And I'm grateful to the government officials and the numerous staff supporting them for all their efforts in trying to bring down these barriers in a sustainable fashion.
Building on what you said, sir, in India, the first challenge is access to comprehensive information on a dashboard, something that helps academia and the startup to navigate on getting entire details on INDUS-X. Your thoughts on a common dashboard?
So I think we are making good strides out in India on those aspects out there. So, for example, as I indicated earlier, in August, we did closely work with the Startup Incubation and Innovation Center in IIT Kanpur that has actually been working closely with IDEX in trying to create programs that is growing awareness of the startup and incubation facilities all over India. And there are many of these technology centers and other hubs that are happening at other places as well. Again, I think the notion of having central portal that provides additional information and creates a lot more momentum for this academic collaborations is important. And again, this is something we continue to work on, and hopefully again in the next 6 months you will start seeing something like that. And a very specific movement towards that is actually goes beyond even the website portal. There is efforts towards creating test beds, shared test beds. These would be physical equipment and data sharing, as well as virtual frameworks that can seamlessly be used by institutions across both countries. They may be for fees based on what that infrastructure is, but we are trying to create such a testbed infrastructure, and the academic institutions are helping in a big way, in addition to some of the industry partners in setting up these testbeds. So again, hopefully in the next 12 months, we will not only have this web portal that you indicate that helps seed this collaboration, but we will also start having some physical infrastructure that people can share and know what is the expertise that exists.
How INDUS-X is different from similar arrangements US has, like AUKUS?
So I think one of the aspects that we considered again is, as I mentioned, India and US have a special relationship with respect to being the oldest democracy and the largest democracy in the world. And if you look at how things have shaped up in the last 10-15 years, I think the intersectionality of common interests, both in technology as well as geopolitical interests, have started fusing together. And there are also a lot of shared passion among the leadership, the industry, as well as government, in trying to tap into the unlimited potential of this partnership to, as I say, propel the entire mankind to a better plate. And as far as the US relationship with other strategic partners, some of those strategic partners have been strategic partners for a much longer time as far as the United States is concerned. And as far as India is concerned, we have had our up and down cycles. And I think the INDUS-X, the ISET collaborations that are happening, could be a landmark event in our histories that changes our trajectory from these oscillatory behaviors to something that is firm, that basically lasts in good times and bad times. There are already evidence that this is now going to land us getting up into a different trajectory. So all I can tell you is, compared to other relationships that US has, which we significantly value, of course, but with India, we just want to try and get this to the next level so that our relationship is redefined to such a way that it really overcomes some of the oscillatory behavior that we have seen in the past. And I truly believe that is possible. And I also wish it happens, given my own shared heritage, having grown up in India, have lots of friends and family still in India, and also to the United States, that has broadened my own notion of what world means, what family means. And partnership with India and US growing, may actually be the hope that every person who aspires a world where every individual, every researcher can contribute to the common good for mankind, and that we actually have a Earth to protect and actually explore well beyond Earth and what can it do for the good of humankind. And I think whenever people think about defense, you tend to think about war or fighting. But I think defense is essential in trying to give you that safety net, to give you that protection, to give you that sense of strength that can keep peace and that can let you operate and get you to the peak of your potential. So I'm truly excited about it, and I know for a fact that a lot of researchers and scientists in both countries are excited about it, and I hope the general public and will join us in this momentum to make this happen.
Finally, last question before we wind up our podcast, sir. What's the next milestone announcement coming and when?
So the most relevant announcement would be additional details on specific testbeds that will become available for shared use. There is also progress that you're going to see with specific startups that have already started teaming with academic collaborators with very specific capabilities. You're going to start seeing progress in that direction. You're going to see additional calls for collaborations in specific areas that invite both academic partners and industry partners for funded opportunities. That's something that you're going to see. And more importantly, you're going to see increased frequency of interactions in some of these meetings. I believe sometime in May, we expect another meeting which will deepen the defense technologies specifically related to some of the space aspects, with an event from Penn State led event in Pittsburgh sometime in May. That's another event that's going to happen. Similar events are being planned in India, led by the Indian Space Association. So there is going to be a lot of momentum. So keep tuned, and hopefully the portal that you indicate is going to get a lot of that information. And there is a portal at Penn State for the INDUS-X events, and that is a site that will serve as a transitionary portal before it gets into a more permanent portal. So that's a place where you can go and look for some of these up and coming events.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us a comprehensive roundup on INDUS-X and especially insight into academia startup partnership between India and US. Wishing you best for your future next generation defense technology innovation endeavor.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Final comment, I just wanted to tell you that there are many people behind this success, and they continue to work even as we speak today in making this progress. I look forward to you listening to many of those people as well in future podcasts. Thank you very much, and we can get all the support from anyone listening to this. You're very welcome to be part of this community effort. Thank you.